The music room was quiet except for the soft ticking of the old wall clock. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, catching dust particles dancing in the air. 16-year-old Mei Lin sat alone at the upright piano, her fingers moving like water over the keys. She played with her eyes closed, letting Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major flow through her as if it were her own heartbeat. The complex melody filled the empty room with emotion so raw it might have brought tears to anyone listening. But no one was listening, and that was exactly how Mei wanted it. The final notes hung in the air when the door squeaked open. Mei's hands jumped from the keys as if burned. She straightened her posture and quickly flipped open the beginner's book she kept as cover. "There you are." Ms. Winters, the school's music teacher, bustled in with an armful of sheet music. Her colorful scarf fluttered as she moved. "I've been looking everywhere for you." "Sorry," Mei mumbled, staring at the simple exercises in the book. "Just practicing." Ms. Winters set down her papers and peered at the open page. "Good basics, though I'm surprised you're still working on those." She smiled kindly. "You've been taking lessons for what, 3 years now?" "4, Mei corrected quietly. 4 years of private lessons with old Mr. Chen from her neighborhood, paid for by her grandmother's careful saving. 4 years of playing simple tunes for her teacher at school while mastering Liszt and Rachmaninoff in secret. Well, your dedication to fundamentals is commendable." Ms. Winters pushed her glasses up her nose. "Actually, I'm glad I found you. We have a bit of a situation with the charity concert tomorrow night." Mei's stomach tightened. She'd carefully avoided any mention of the annual event that put student musicians on display in front of the whole school and half the town. Li Min has the flu. Terrible timing. She was scheduled for the 7 o'clock slot. Ms. Winters continued. "We need someone to fill in. I don't—" Mei began, but Ms. Winters waved away her protest. "Nothing complicated. Just a simple piece to keep the program flowing. Maybe for Elise. The first part only, of course." She smiled encouragingly. "It's perfect for your level." Mei bit her lip. The first part only of Beethoven's famous composition was what people taught children who'd been playing for a few months, not 4 years. But correcting Ms. Winters would mean revealing her true abilities, which would lead to questions about why she'd been hiding them, which would lead to performances and attention and eyes watching her and judging her and— "I can't," Mei said, her voice barely audible. "I get too nervous." Ms. Winters sighed and sat beside her on the piano bench. "Mei, this concert raises money for the Children's Hospital. Every slot matters. I wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate." She placed a gentle hand on Mei's shoulder. "It's one simple piece. 3 minutes tops." The wall clock ticked loudly in the silence that followed. "My grandmother will be disappointed if I say no," Mei finally whispered. More to herself than to Ms. Winters. "Is she musical too?" Mei nodded. Her grandmother, who had raised her since she was 5, had once dreamed of being a concert pianist herself. Life and circumstances had prevented it, but her love for music had been passed down like a precious family heirloom. "Then do it for her," Ms. Winters suggested, standing up. "I'll put you down for Für Elise and first movement only. The sheet music is over there if you need it." She pointed to a shelf of beginner compositions before hurrying out, leaving Mei alone with the weight of her decision. As the door closed, Mei's shoulders slumped. She closed the beginner book and allowed her fingers to return to the keys, this time playing Chopin's Revolutionary Etude, her hands a blur of movement as the powerful, turbulent notes filled the room. That evening, Mei sat at her grandmother's kitchen table, pushing rice around her plate with chopsticks. The small apartment smelled of ginger and garlic from the stir-fry her grandmother had prepared. "You're quiet tonight," grandmother observed, her weathered hands cradling a cup of tea. Despite working long hours at the dry cleaning shop, she somehow managed to make dinner every evening. "Ms. Winters asked me to play in the charity concert tomorrow," Mei said finally. "Someone got sick." Her grandmother's face lit up. "That's wonderful. Your first performance." Mei didn't correct her. There had been a recital when she was 13, a disaster of shaking hands and missed notes that ended with Mei running off stage in tears, vowing never to perform in public again. "It's just a simple piece," Mei explained, not meeting her grandmother's eyes. "For Elise, the easy part." "Ah." Her grandmother nodded, a flicker of something. Disappointment, crossing her face before being replaced with an encouraging smile. "Well, it's still an honor to be asked." Later, while washing dishes together, her grandmother spoke again. "You know, I was about your age when I gave up on music school." May looked up in surprise. Her grandmother rarely spoke of her past. "My teacher said I had talent. Enough for a scholarship, maybe. But my father didn't see the point." She handed May a dripping plate. "Girls in our village didn't become musicians. They became wives and mothers. You became both," May said softly. "A mother to Mom and then to me." Her grandmother's eyes crinkled at the corners. "Yes, and I don't regret my life. But sometimes I wonder what might have happened if I'd fought harder for what I wanted." She dried her hands on a towel. "The older I get, the more I realize how many doors we close ourselves out of fear." That night, May couldn't sleep. She got up and sat by her window, looking out at the streetlights. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend Ling. "Heard you're playing tomorrow." "Finally! Can't wait," May groaned. News traveled fast at school. Now people would expect something from her. They would watch her. Judge her. What if she failed again, like at that recital? What if her hands shook so badly she couldn't play even the simple tune Ms. Winters had assigned? But then she thought of her grandmother, of sacrificed dreams and closed doors, of 4 years of lessons paid for with extra shifts and careful budgeting. The next day passed in a blur. May moved through her classes like a sleepwalker, barely hearing the teachers. At lunch, Ling chatted excitedly about the concert while May nodded, her stomach too knotted to eat. "You'll be amazing," Ling insisted, squeezing her arm. "I've heard you practice sometimes when you think no one's around." "You're really good, May." May stared at her friend. "What did you hear me play?" Ling shrugged. "I don't know the names of fancy piano pieces, but it wasn't beginner stuff, that's for sure." By the time May arrived backstage at the concert hall that evening, her hands were ice cold despite the warm spring night. Through a gap in the curtains, she could see the auditorium filling up. Parents, teachers, students, community members, all there to support the Children's Hospital fundraiser. All future witnesses to her humiliation if she froze. She spotted her grandmother being escorted to a front row seat by a student volunteer. She looked small but elegant in her best blue dress, her silver hair pinned neatly. She was scanning the stage area eagerly, looking for her granddaughter. The backstage area buzzed with nervous energy as performers adjusted instruments and outfits. May sat alone on a folding chair, running through Für Elise in her mind. Such a simple piece. 3 minutes, like Miss Winters had said. She could get through 3 minutes. "You're up after June's violin solo," Ms. Winters told her, appearing suddenly with the event program. "About 15 minutes from now." May nodded, unable to speak. "Are you all right? You look pale." Ms. Winters frowned with concern. "Just nervous," May whispered. "Everyone gets nervous. Remember, it's just a simple tune. No one's expecting perfection." She patted May's shoulder before hurrying off to solve some new crisis. No one's expecting anything at all, May thought. That was the problem. No one knew what she could really do. Not Ms. Winters, not her classmates. Only grandmother, who had paid for years of lessons, who had given up her own dreams, who believed in May even when May didn't believe in herself. May watched as performers went on stage one by one. A flutist played a cheerful folk tune. A rock band of 10th graders performed a decent cover of a pop song. June, a 7th grader, bravely worked through a violin piece despite obvious nerves. Each received enthusiastic applause, and then it was May's turn. "Next, we have Maylene performing Beethoven's Für Elise," the principal announced. May's legs felt like water as she walked to the grand piano that dominated center stage. The spotlights were blinding, making it impossible to see individual faces in the audience. But she knew her grandmother was there, watching, hoping. She sat at the piano bench, adjusted it slightly, and placed her hands over the keys. The auditorium fell silent, waiting. In that moment of perfect quiet, a voice inside her whispered, "This is your chance." Not just to play, but to really be heard. She thought of all the hours alone in practice rooms, of her grandmother's sacrifices, of doors closed out of fear. Her hands hovered over the keys as she made her decision. The audience waited for the familiar opening notes of Für Elise. And Maylene took a deep breath, ready to change everything. May's fingers trembled above the keys. The spotlight felt hot on her skin, and the silence of the waiting audience pressed against her ears. For a heartbeat, she considered playing the simple tune as planned. Safe, expected, forgettable. But something had shifted inside her. Maybe it was her grandmother's words about closed doors, or maybe it was simply time for the music she kept locked within herself to break free. May closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and began to play. Not the elementary notes of Fur-Elise, but the thundering opening of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3 in D minor. The first powerful chords rang out across the stunned auditorium. In the wings, Ms. Winters dropped her clipboard, with a clatter that went unnoticed beneath the cascade of notes now filling the space. May's hands moved with confidence and precision that came from countless hours of secret practice. The technically demanding piece, one that many professional pianists approached with caution, flowed from her fingers as naturally as breathing. From her front row seat, grandmother straightened her back, her eyes widening in recognition of the notoriously difficult composition. A smile slowly spread across her face as she watched her granddaughter transform on stage. As May played, something strange happened. Her nervousness didn't disappear. She could still feel her heart racing, but it no longer mattered. The music carried her forward, note by perfect note. The audience, the school, even her own fears seemed to fade until there was nothing but May and the piano in perfect communion. She reached the lyrical middle section, where the thunder gives way to gentle rain. Her touch became lighter, more delicate. Without opening her eyes, she sensed the audience leaning forward in their seats, collectively holding their breath. Principal Wang stood frozen at the side of the stage. He had introduced dozens of student performers over the years, but he had never witnessed anything like this. This wasn't a student performing. This was an artist revealing herself to the world. In the third row, May's math teacher, Mr. Huang, who had always found her too quiet in class, sat with his mouth slightly open. Next to him, the usually chatty physics teacher, Mrs. Chen, was completely silent, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. And in the back of the auditorium, an older man slipped in quietly through the doors. Mr. Chen, May's private piano teacher, had received a puzzling text from May's grandmother earlier. "Come tonight. She's finally ready." Now he understood, and pride swelled in his chest as he watched his most gifted student finally embrace her talent publicly. May was deep in the heart of the concerto now, her small body swaying slightly with the music. The piece demanded everything: technical skill, physical stamina, emotional depth, and she gave it all. Her fingers flew across the keys during the challenging passages that had frustrated her for months in practice. Tonight they came easily, as if the piano was an extension of herself. Ling watched her friend from the audience, a hand pressed to her mouth. She had heard May play in empty classrooms, but this was different. This was May with all her walls down, her soul exposed through music. Ling felt tears prick her eyes as she realized how much courage this moment must have taken. As May approached the final movement, she finally opened her eyes. The bright lights made it difficult to see faces clearly, but she found her grandmother in the front row. The older woman's face shone with tears and fierce pride. Their eyes met briefly, a moment of perfect understanding between them. With renewed energy, May launched into the finale. Her hands became a blur, attacking the keys with controlled passion. The complex runs and arpeggios that had once seemed impossible now flowed from her fingers like water. The grand piano, usually played with polite restraint by students, resonated throughout the hall with rich, powerful tones that seemed to vibrate in the listeners' chests. Ms. Winters had recovered enough to watch from stage right, her hand pressed against her heart. How had she missed this? How had this extraordinary talent been sitting in her music room for years without her noticing? She felt a mixture of amazement and regret for all the time she had handed May beginner pieces, never suspecting the depths beneath the quiet exterior. As May raced toward the concerto's dramatic conclusion, the atmosphere in the auditorium was electric. Every person there knew they were witnessing something special, the moment someone stepped fully into their power for the first time. With a final flourish, May struck the last chords. The sound resonated through the hall and then faded to silence. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved or made a sound. Then the audience erupted. People jumped to their feet, applauding wildly. Some were shouting, "Bravo!" Others were simply staring in disbelief. Ling was whistling through her fingers. Mr. Chen was clapping so hard his hands hurt. And grandmother was standing perfectly still in the front row, tears streaming down her face, looking at her granddaughter as if seeing her clearly for the first time. May sat frozen at the piano, suddenly aware again of where she was and what she had done. The thunderous applause washed over her like a physical wave. Her heart hammered in her chest, but not from fear anymore. She felt light, as if she might float away if she stood up. Principal Wong recovered first, rushing onto the stage. "Mei Lin, everyone!" "Mei Lin," he announced, though it was hardly necessary. Every person in that room would remember her name. May rose shakily and managed a small bow. The applause grew even louder. She glanced toward the wings and saw Ms. Winters staring at her with an unreadable expression. Shock mixed with something else. Admiration? Confusion? Hurt? She would have to explain later why she had hidden her abilities for so long. But right now, all May could think about was her grandmother. She looked again to the front row and saw the older woman brushing away tears while accepting congratulations from those around her. May took another bow and then, not knowing what else to do, walked off stage on wobbly legs. The moment she was out of sight of the audience, she leaned against the wall, trembling from head to toe. The adrenaline that had carried her through the performance was ebbing now, leaving her feeling both drained and electrified. May. Ms. Winters approached cautiously, as if May had suddenly become someone she didn't recognize. That was, "I had no idea you could," for once. The usually composed teacher seemed at a loss for words. "I'm sorry I didn't play what you asked me to," May said quietly. Ms. Winters laughed, a startled sound. "Sorry? My dear, do you have any idea what you just did out there?" Before May could answer, she was surrounded by other performers, all talking at once. That was insane. "How long have you been playing like that? Are you some kind of prodigy? Why didn't you ever tell anyone?" Their voices blended together in May's ears. She felt overwhelmed, unsure how to handle this sudden attention after years of deliberately staying in the shadows. Her gaze darted around, looking for an escape. Then the crowd parted, and her grandmother was there, moving slowly but purposefully toward her. The older woman's face was a map of emotions: pride, joy, vindication. "Grandmother, May began, but couldn't find the words to continue. Her grandmother reached her and took both of May's hands in her own weathered ones. "You played for both of us tonight," she said simply, and in those few words was everything: understanding of why May had hidden her talent, recognition of the fear she had overcome, acknowledgement of the doors that now stood open before her. Before May could respond, Principal Wong approached, followed by a tall man in a suit whom May didn't recognize. "May, this is Dr. Rivera from the Regional Conservatory of Music," Principal Wong said, his voice unusually high with excitement. "He was here to support our fundraiser and, well," he gestured vaguely, "he would like to speak with you." Dr. Rivera extended his hand. "Miss Lin, that was extraordinary, particularly from someone your age. We would be very interested in having you audition for our Special Talents program." May shook his hand automatically, her mind whirling. The Regional Conservatory was where serious musicians studied, those on track for professional careers. "Thank you. But I need some time to think," she managed to say. "Of course." He handed her a business card. "Please call me when you're ready to discuss possibilities." As he walked away, May felt a gentle squeeze on her shoulder. She turned to find Mr. Chen, her private teacher, standing beside her with tears in his eyes. "Tonight you became the musician I always knew you could be," he said softly. "The real question is, who will you become tomorrow?" May looked from Mr. Chen to her grandmother, to the business card in her hand. Something had shifted irrevocably in her world. With one choice, to play not what was expected, but what was true, she had set herself on a new path. And despite the uncertainty ahead, despite the explanations she would need to give and the decisions she would need to make, May felt something unfamiliar blooming in her chest. It felt remarkably like freedom. May woke the next morning to sunlight streaming through her curtains and the lingering feeling that she had dreamed the events of the previous night. But the conservatory business card on her nightstand confirmed everything had been real. She had played Rachmaninoff on stage. People had applauded, stood up even. And now things would be different. Her phone buzzed with incoming messages. May pulled the blanket over her head, not ready to face whatever waited for her. After several minutes hiding in the darkness of her cocoon, she reluctantly peeked out and grabbed her phone. 27 new messages. Most were from classmates she barely spoke to, asking variations of "Was that really you?" and "Where did you learn to play like that?" Ling had sent a dozen by herself, the last one reading, "Call me when you wake up or I'm coming over." May was about to put the phone down when a new notification appeared, a link from Ling. She clicked it and found herself looking at a video titled "Hidden." Prodigy stuns audience. The thumbnail showed her at the piano, head bent in concentration. The video already had over 2,000 views. Her stomach dropped. Someone had recorded her performance and put it online. She watched with a mixture of fascination and horror, as camera phone footage showed her walking onto the stage, hesitating and then launching into Rachmaninoff instead of the expected simple tune. The audio quality was poor, but even through the phone's tiny speaker, the power of the music came through. The comment section was filled with praise. Who is she? Why haven't we heard of her before? That's Rachmaninoff's third concerto. Most professionals struggle with this piece. The way she transitions from the allegro to the intermezzo, just wow. Her technique is incredible, but what gets me is the emotion. You can feel every note. May put down the phone, her hands shaking slightly. Last night, there had been hundreds of people in the auditorium. Now thousands more had seen her play. The very thought made her want to crawl back under her blanket and never come out. "May?" Her grandmother's voice called from the kitchen. "Are you awake?" "Your teacher called," May groaned. "Which one?" She called back. "Mr. Chen. He wants you to come to the studio today. He says it's important." May dragged herself out of bed. The smell of fried eggs and rice wafted from the kitchen. Her grandmother was cooking a celebratory breakfast, something she usually only did on birthdays or New Year's. There she is. Grandmother beamed as May shuffled into the kitchen. "My brilliant girl. Sit, eat." May slid into her chair, oddly shy in front of her grandmother after last night's revelation. They had stayed up late talking after returning home from the concert. Her grandmother telling stories about her own brief time studying piano before family obligations forced her to stop. "You've carried my dream and made it bigger," she had told May, "but now it must become your dream, not mine." As they ate breakfast, grandmother spoke about Mr. Chen's call. "He says many people are asking about you. A reporter from the local paper, the director of the Youth Symphony." She paused, and Dr. Rivera from the conservatory called him directly. May pushed rice around her plate. "I don't know if I'm ready for all this." "Ready or not, it has found you." Grandmother reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Sometimes life waits until we're brave enough to show ourselves, and sometimes it doesn't wait at all." An hour later, May stood outside Mr. Chen's small studio. Through the window, she could see him talking animatedly with someone whose back was to her. Taking a deep breath, she knocked. The door opened immediately as if Mr. Chen had been waiting for her. "May, come in, come in. We have much to discuss." His round face was flushed with excitement. Inside, a woman in a sleek blue dress stood up from the piano bench. "May Lin? I'm Isabel Tan from the Symphony Foundation. I was at the concert last night." She extended her hand. "Your performance was extraordinary." May shook her hand timidly. "Thank you. Ms. Tan was just telling me about an opportunity," Mr. Chen said, gesturing for May to sit. "The Symphony's Young Artist Showcase. It's in 3 weeks." May's eyes widened. The Young Artist Showcase was a prestigious event, featuring the most talented students in the region. Musicians who performed there often went on to major conservatories or even professional careers. "We had a pianist cancel yesterday, actually," Ms. Tan explained. "When I saw you play last night, I knew we had found our replacement." "It's short notice, I know, but with your skill level..." "I don't know," May said softly. "Last night was my first real performance in years. I'm not sure I'm ready for something bigger." Ms. Tan smiled. "Based on that, Rachmaninoff, I'd say you're more than ready. But it's your decision. The showcase would mean performing a 15-minute program. You'd need to prepare 2 or 3 pieces," Mr. Chen jumped in. "I've already been thinking about repertoire. The Rachmaninoff, obviously. Perhaps paired with something more delicate, a Chopin nocturne? Or Debussy." May felt overwhelmed as they discussed possibilities. Last week she had been just another quiet student who nobody noticed. Now these adults were planning her musical debut as if her future as a pianist was already decided. "Can I think about it?" she finally asked. "Of course," Ms. Tan said, handing her a card similar to Dr. Rivera's. "But I'll need an answer by Monday. We have to finalize the program. After Ms. Tan left, Mr. Chen could barely contain himself. This is just the beginning, May. With your talent I always knew you had, there's no limit to what you can achieve. You never pushed me to perform, May said. Why? Mr. Chen's excitement dimmed slightly. After that first recital when you were so upset, I believed you needed to find your own courage. I couldn't give that to you. He smiled gently. And last night you did. Later that afternoon, May finally met up with Ling at their favorite bubble tea shop. Her friend practically tackled her at the door. You're famous, Ling squealed, pulling May toward their usual corner table. That video has over 5,000 views now. People from other schools are asking about you. May sipped her tea, trying to process this new reality. It's weird, she admitted. Everyone suddenly wants something from me. Because you're amazing. I always knew you were good, but that was... Ling shook her head at a loss for words. Why did you hide it for so long? May stared down at her drink. I was scared, she said simply. After that disaster when I was 13, I just couldn't handle the idea of failing in front of people again. But you didn't fail. You absolutely crushed it. I know. And that's almost scarier because now there are expectations. May explained about the Young Artist Showcase invitation. What if I say yes and then choke? Ling rolled her eyes. After what I saw last night? Not possible, she leaned forward. Look, I've known you since we were 9. You've always been the quiet one, the one who hangs back. But when you played that piano last night, she paused. It was like seeing the real you for the first time. May felt tears prick her eyes. I felt like me for the first time. Like I wasn't hiding anymore. So don't go back to hiding, Ling said firmly. Say yes to the showcase. That evening, May sat at the small, upright piano in her living room, the same one her grandmother had bought secondhand when May first showed interest in music. Its tone wasn't as rich as the grand piano at school, but it had been her faithful companion for years. Listening patiently to her most vulnerable expressions, she played softly, working through a gentle Chopin nocturne that might pair well with the thundering Rachmaninoff for the showcase. As the delicate notes filled their small apartment, she thought about the doors that were suddenly opening before her. The conservatory. The showcase. A future in music that had always seemed like a far-off dream. Her grandmother appeared in the doorway, listening with a smile. You've made your decision? May nodded, her fingers still moving across the keys. I'm scared, she admitted. But I'm more scared of going back to hiding. Good, her grandmother said simply. Fear is natural. Hiding is a choice. May's phone buzzed on top of the piano. It was Ms. Winters, her school music teacher, asking if they could meet tomorrow to talk. May had been avoiding thinking about that particular conversation, explaining why she had pretended to be a beginner all these years. As if reading her thoughts, Grandmother said, You'll need to make peace with your teacher. What do I say to her? Sorry I lied about my abilities for 4 years? The truth is always a good place to start. She may be hurt, but she will understand fear. May finished the nocturne, letting the final notes linger in the air. Everything's changing so fast. Change is like music, her grandmother said, sitting beside her on the bench. Sometimes it comes in gentle notes and sometimes in sudden chords that shake the ground beneath your feet. But it always moves forward, waiting for no one. May leaned her head on her grandmother's shoulder, feeling both younger and older than her 16 years. The weight of expectation pressed on her, but beneath it was a growing excitement. For the first time, she was curious about her own potential, about how far her music might take her. Her phone buzzed again with another message from an unfamiliar number. Saw your video. Incredible talent. Would you consider an interview for Music Youth magazine? May showed the message to her grandmother, who raised her eyebrows. Fame finds you quickly these days. I don't want to be famous, May said. I just want to play. Her grandmother smiled. Then play you will. The rest will sort itself out. May looked down at her hands, the hands that had revealed her secret to the world. Whatever happened next, the showcase, the conservatory, interviews, she would face it. The hardest part was already behind her, stepping out of the shadows and into the spotlight. She had been told to play a simple tune. Instead, she had played her truth, and now there was no going back. The school hallway felt different on Monday morning. Conversations hushed as May walked past, followed by whispers and glances. A few brave students approached to congratulate her, while others seemed unsure how to act around this new version of the quiet girl they thought they knew. May kept her head down, clutching her books to her chest like armor. Fame, even on this small scale, was uncomfortable. She had spent years perfecting invisibility, and now she stood out like a beacon. "There's our superstar." Ling appeared beside her, linking their arms together. "How are you holding up?" "Everyone's staring," May whispered. "Let them stare. They're just mad they underestimated you all this time." Ling squeezed her arm. "Oh, and fair warning. Mr. Huang told our entire math class he's expecting concert-level excellence on today's quiz from you." May groaned. "Great, now I need to be a genius at everything." "Nah, just keep failing PE like always. Balance is important," Ling joked, making May smile despite her nerves. The smile faded when she spotted Ms. Winters waiting outside the music room. Their eyes met, and May felt a pang of guilt. She had agreed to meet her teacher during lunch period to explain her deception. "Want me to come with you later?" Ling offered, following May's gaze. May shook her head. "This is something I need to do alone." Morning classes passed in a blur. May struggled to focus on lessons while her mind rehearsed what she would say to Ms. Winters. When the lunch bell rang, she took her time gathering her things, her appetite completely gone. Ms. Winters was arranging sheet music when May entered the music room. The teacher looked up, her expression unreadable. "May, thank you for coming." May sat on the edge of a chair, hands folded in her lap. "I'm sorry," she began. "I should have been honest about my playing." Ms. Winters set down her papers and studied May for a long moment. "Why weren't you?" she asked simply. The question hung in the air. May had prepared explanations, but now they all seemed like excuses. "I was scared," she admitted finally. "After my first recital went badly, I couldn't handle the thought of performing again. So when I came here and nobody knew me yet, it was easier to just hide. For 4 years." Ms. Winters sounded more puzzled than angry. "That's a long time to pretend to be less than you are." "I didn't think of it as pretending," May said. "It was more like protecting myself." Ms. Winters nodded slowly. "I understand fear, May, we all have it. But I wish you had trusted me enough to share your true abilities. I could have helped you work through that fear gradually instead of—" She gestured vaguely. "Whatever happened Friday night?" "It wasn't planned," May said. "When I sat down at the piano, something just changed. I realized I was tired of hiding." A small smile appeared on Ms. Winters's face. "Well, it was certainly dramatic. I nearly had a heart attack when you started playing Rachmaninoff instead of Für Elise." May returned the smile tentatively. "I'm sorry about that part. Don't be. It was the most exciting thing to happen at a school concert in 20 years of teaching." Ms. Winters leaned forward. "But May, where do you go from here? You've shown everyone what you can do. There's no going back to hiding, I know. I'm doing the Young Artist Showcase in 3 weeks. Wonderful. And after that, have you thought about what's next? The regional conservatory, perhaps?" May bit her lip. Everyone seemed to be racing ahead, planning her future. "The conservatory, competitions, a career in music. I'm still figuring it out," she said carefully. Ms. Winters seemed to sense her uncertainty. "It's a lot to process, isn't it? Suddenly having so many options." May nodded, relieved that someone understood. "Everything's happening so fast. Last week nobody cared what I did, and now everyone has expectations. Including you," Ms. Winters pointed out gently. "What do you expect of yourself, May?" The question caught her off guard. What did she want? She loved playing piano. The feel of the keys under her fingers, the way music could express what words couldn't. But did she love performing? Did she want to build her life around it? "I don't know yet," she answered honestly. "That's okay. You're 16. You're allowed to still be figuring things out." Ms. Winters smiled. "Just don't hide any more from others or yourself. Promise me that." "I promise," May said, feeling as if a weight had lifted. At least one adult wasn't rushing her toward decisions. Later that afternoon, May met with Mr. Chen to begin preparing for the showcase. They settled on 3 pieces: the Rachmaninoff that had stunned the audience, a lyrical Chopin nocturne for contrast, and a vibrant listitude to close the program. 15 minutes to show what you can do, Mr. Chen said, making notes in his planner. "We'll need to polish everything to perfection." "I've already been practicing the Rachmaninoff for months," May reminded him. "Yes, but now you're preparing to perform it. Not just play it alone in your room. Different mindset, different preparation." He tapped his pencil against the music stand. "We'll need to work on your stage presence too. Posture, bowing, how you approach the piano. Details matter. May hadn't considered these aspects of performance. She had been so focused on the music itself that she'd forgotten about all the surrounding elements that went into a professional presentation. I want you to watch videos of great pianists, Mr. Chen instructed, not just for their playing technique, but how they carry themselves, how they connect with the audience. That night, May sat cross-legged on her bed, laptop open, watching performances by renowned pianists. She studied how they walked on stage with confidence, acknowledged the audience, positioned themselves at the piano. Some were dramatic in their body movements, others more restrained, but all had a certain presence that commanded attention. Would she ever develop that kind of confidence? The thought seemed impossible, yet a week ago, performing Rachmaninoff in public would have seemed equally impossible. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Rivera at the conservatory. Have you considered our invitation to audition? Would love to discuss your future with us. May set the phone aside without responding. Everyone wanted a piece of her future, while she was still trying to navigate her present. The next 3 weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparation. May practiced before school, during lunch, and late into the evenings. Mr. Chen pushed her harder than ever, refining each phrase, each transition between pieces. Again, he would say after she played through a section, more contrast between the pianissimo and the forte. Make us feel the difference, or, your hands are precise but your face looks worried. The audience sees everything, May. Your expression is part of the performance. Sometimes May felt overwhelmed by his expectations. Other times she surprised herself by wanting more. More precision, more emotion, more connection with the music. Her video from the school concert continued to gain views online. Comments poured in from around the world, many from accomplished musicians impressed by her technique and emotional depth. A classical music blog featured her in an article titled, "Undiscovered Prodigies When Talent Hides in Plain Sight." The attention was strange and sometimes uncomfortable. Classmates she barely knew suddenly wanted to sit with her at lunch or friend her on social media. A boy from her history class asked her out. Though he had never spoken to her before the video went viral, through it all, grandmother remained her anchor, neither overly impressed by the attention nor dismissive of it. Fame is like weather, she told May one evening, as they washed dishes together. Sometimes sunny, sometimes stormy, always changing. Your music is the solid ground beneath your feet. The night before the showcase, May couldn't sleep. She lay awake, mind racing through her program, fingers twitching against the blankets as if playing invisible keys. What if she forgot the music? What if her hands froze? What if the audience, expecting brilliance after seeing her video, found her merely good? At midnight, she crept to the living room and sat at the piano but didn't play. Instead, she placed her hands on the closed lid and closed her eyes, feeling the solid presence of the instrument that had been her secret confidant for so many years. I'm scared, she whispered to the silent keys. That makes two of us, came her grandmother's voice from the hallway. The older woman shuffled into the room in her slippers, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders. I couldn't sleep either. What if I mess up tomorrow? May asked, giving voice to her deepest fear. Grandmother sat beside her on the bench. Then you will mess up, and the world will continue turning. May smiled despite herself. Her grandmother had never been one for empty reassurances. When I was about your age, grandmother continued, my teacher entered me in a competition, not as big as your showcase, but important to me. I practiced for months. Did you win? No, I played terribly. My hands shook so badly I could barely press the keys. She chuckled at the memory. I was so ashamed I quit lessons the next day. May stared at her in surprise. You never told me that. Because what matters isn't that I failed, but that I let that failure define me. I closed a door on my own dreams. She took May's hands in hers. Whatever happens tomorrow, promise me you won't do the same. May squeezed her grandmother's hands. I promise. They sat together in comfortable silence, 2 generations connected by music and the courage it took to pursue it. Outside, the city slept under a canopy of stars, unaware that in a small apartment, a young pianist was preparing not just for a performance, but for a moment that might define her future. Tomorrow would come with its challenges and opportunities. But tonight, May found peace in the quiet presence of her grandmother and the faithful piano that had heard her every secret note. The symphony hall stood grand and imposing against the evening sky. May had passed this building countless times on the bus. gazing up at its elegant architecture and wondering what it would be like to perform there. Now she was about to find out. Deep breaths, grandmother said, straightening May's collar as they stood in the lobby. Remember why you play? May nodded, unable to speak through the knot of anxiety in her throat. She wore a simple black dress borrowed from her cousin. Nothing fancy, but the nicest thing she owned. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, making her look older than her 16 years. Around them, other young musicians hurried past with instrument cases and folders of sheet music. Most were accompanied by parents who looked even more nervous than their children. May spotted Ms. Tan, the Symphony Foundation representative, checking names off a list at a side door. There you are. Ms. Tan waved them over. May, you'll be in the green room with the other performers. You're second to last on the program. She handed May a printed schedule. Your grandmother can take her reserved seat in the front row. Grandmother squeezed May's hand. I'll be right there watching. Just like at home when you practice, May tried to smile, but her face felt frozen. The reality of what she was about to do, perform 3 challenging pieces in front of hundreds of people, including music critics and conservatory representatives, was hitting her full force. As if sensing her panic, grandmother leaned close. Remember what I told you? Whatever happens, the world keeps turning. With those words echoing in her mind, May followed Ms. Tan through the side door and down a corridor to the green room. Inside, about a dozen young musicians were warming up, adjusting instruments or sitting quietly with eyes closed in concentration. A boy about May's age was doing stretches in the corner, while a girl with a violin carefully tuned her strings. 15 minutes until showtime, a stage manager announced, poking his head into the room. First 3 performers, please be ready. May found a quiet corner and sat down, her music folder clutched to her chest. Being second to last meant a long wait. She closed her eyes, trying to center herself as Mr. Chen had taught her. Feel the music in your mind first, he always said. Let it flow from your thoughts to your fingertips. She ran through her program mentally, imagining her fingers pressing the keys, hearing each note in her head. The mental practice calmed her slightly, but her heart still raced. A light tap on her shoulder broke her concentration. She opened her eyes to find the violinist standing there with a kind smile. First showcase? She asked. May nodded. Me too. Well, for violin anyway. The girl sat beside her. I'm Zoe. I saw your video online. The Rachmaninoff was incredible. Thanks, May said softly. I'm May. I figured, Zoe grinned. You're kind of famous in music student circles right now. The girl who hid her talent and then blew everyone away? May winced. Was that her identity now? Sorry, Zoe said quickly, noting May's expression. That came out wrong. I just meant it was really impressive. Most of us have been doing these showcases and competitions since we were little kids. It takes guts to step up for the first time at our age. May hadn't thought about it that way. Most of these performers probably had years of stage experience. She was the newcomer, jumping into the deep end. One by one, the performers were called to the stage. Each time the door opened, May caught glimpses of the grand concert hall beyond, the gleaming hardwood stage, the rows of red velvet seats, the magnificent crystal chandelier. She listened as a flutist played a lilting Mozart piece, followed by a cellist performing Bach. Each musician was skilled, their performances polished to near perfection. The knot in May's stomach tightened. How could she measure up to such seasoned performers? You'll be up after the string quartet, the stage manager told her as the evening progressed. About 10 minutes, May nodded, her mouth dry. She stood and began to pace, her mind racing through her program again. Rachmaninoff, Chopin, Liszt. The pieces she had lived with for so long in private were about to become public offerings. The string quartet finished to enthusiastic applause. May watched as they returned to the green room, faces flushed with success. Then the stage manager appeared at her side. They're ready for you, May. Her legs felt like lead as she followed him through the backstage area. The stage itself was bigger than she had imagined, the grand piano at its center looking both inviting and intimidating. Take your time, the stage manager whispered before disappearing into the wings. May stood at the edge of the stage, momentarily frozen. The auditorium was packed, every seat filled. She could make out her grandmother in the front row, Mr. Chen a few seats away, and surprisingly, Ms. Winters from school. Even Ling had come, sitting with her parents further back. So many people, so many expectations. For one terrible moment, May thought she might run. The exit sign glowed temptingly at the back of the hall. She could walk away from all this pressure, all these eyes, all these expectations. But then she remembered why she was here. Not for them. For herself. For the music that had been her secret joy for so long. For the grandmother who had sacrificed to nurture her gift. Taking a deep breath, May stepped onto the stage. The spotlight followed her as she walked to the piano. She remembered Mr. Chen's coaching. Back straight, steps confident, acknowledged the audience. She gave a small bow as applause greeted her. Then she adjusted the bench, placed her music on the stand, though she knew the pieces by heart, and positioned her hands above the keys. In that suspended moment before the first note, May found a strange calm descending. The faces watching her blurred. The pressure of expectations faded. There was only May and the piano and the music waiting to be born. She began with Rachmaninoff. The powerful opening chords resonated throughout the hall, filling every corner with sound. The piece that had announced her talent to the world now served as her formal introduction to the wider musical community. As she played, something extraordinary happened. The nervousness that had plagued her all day transformed into energy that flowed through her playing. Each phrase became more vibrant, each dynamic shift more dramatic. She wasn't just reproducing notes from a page. She was telling a story through sound. When the last thundering chord of the Rachmaninoff faded, there was a moment of absolute silence before applause erupted, but May barely registered it. She was already transitioning mentally to Chopin, her hands finding the gentle opening notes of the nocturne without conscious thought. The contrast between the powerful concerto and the delicate nocturne showcased her range. Where Rachmaninoff demanded technical prowess, Chopin called for sensitivity and nuance. May's touch lightened, her body swaying slightly with the emotional current of the music. In the front row, grandmother watched with tears in her eyes. This was more than a performance. It was the unveiling of a soul long kept hidden. Beside her, Mr. Chen nodded in approval at each perfectly executed passage. Ms. Winters sat with hands clasped under her chin, witnessing the full flowering of a talent she had glimpsed only recently. May closed the nocturne with a feather-light touch, then, after the briefest pause, launched into Liszt's La Campanella. Her fingers danced over the keys with precision and speed that belied her years of practice. The technically challenging etude, with its rapid repeated notes and huge leaps across the keyboard, demonstrated not just skill but musicality beyond her years. As she approached the final measures, May felt a curious sensation, as if she were both intensely present in her body and somehow floating above it, watching herself perform. She could see her hands flying across the keys, could feel the music flowing through her like electricity, could sense the audience holding their collective breath. With a flourish, she struck the final chords. Her hands lifted from the keys and hovered in the air for a heartbeat before returning to her lap. The hall erupted. People rose to their feet, applauding wildly. Calls of "Brava!" echoed from different corners of the auditorium. May sat momentarily stunned by the response, then remembered to stand and bow as she had practiced with Mr. Chen. As she straightened, her eyes found her grandmother's face in the front row. The older woman stood applauding with everyone else, but her expression held something beyond pride. A knowing look that seemed to say, "Now you understand." And May did understand. She understood why her grandmother had never given up on her playing, even when May herself had wanted to hide. She understood the power of music to connect people across differences of age and background. Most of all, she understood that in revealing her true self, her talent, her passion, her voice, she had found a freedom that no amount of hiding could provide. She took another bow, this one deeper and more confident than the first. The applause continued unabated. Ms. Tan appeared from the wings with a bouquet of flowers, which May accepted with surprised gratitude. There would be more to come. Conversations with the conservatory, decisions about her future, challenges to overcome. But in this moment, standing on this stage she had once only dreamed of, Mei Lin was exactly where she belonged. She had been told to play a simple tune. Instead, she had played her heart. And in doing so, she had conquered not just the stage, but her own fears. The journey ahead would have its difficult passages, its complex harmonies and dissonant chords, but May would play them all, no longer from the shadows but in the spotlight she had earned note by brilliant note.